To start off, our group found that the two most important points when starting a essay or anything related to that matter, we found that you should always try to connect with the reader, anything that will promote their interest, anything to get their attention so that they want to read, instead of looking at something just for the first paragraph and you don't find any interest. And we found it on page 336 and 337. The last paragraph in the first one kind of explains that more in depth in the Norton Field Guide. And then we also thought that the define key terms and concepts is very important, because if they don't know exactly what you're talking about, then they will lose interest very quickly. And then in terms of ending, then it comes to the three biggest points is always going to be refer back to the beginning, those proposing your call to action, how to make this more a bigger picture for everyone. And then ending with an anecdote tends to help people feel more connected, more relatable. And so those are really big.
Chapter 33, in the second paragraph, it states to establish context by explaining how the text fits into a larger conversation. So in the article, Has Smartphones Destroyed a Generation? It does this in the intro by telling a story about a young girl with a phone. And I think this leads readers into the conversation on how phones are affecting the generation. So I believe this is effective because it sets up readers and it also catches attention on the subject.
So going back with the Norton Field Guide to how on page 340, there at the last paragraph, it talks about referring to the beginning, and how we already talked about how that's pretty effective, and it helps connect readers because it shows the consistency throughout the entire writing. And so in this, the How Have Smartphones Destroyed a Generation, we see that the author goes back to the girl who's telling him that, yeah, my friends, they do sit on their phones a lot. And so he's kind of making an anecdote and a personal connections with the readers, which is why I think it's so effective, because it really points it out to our generation, who are mainly the people who are really addicted to smartphones, and so that's why it works so well here in this instance.
Alright, so the helpful part of chapter 33 to me was on page 332, paragraph 3, and it says, entice your readers to read on by connecting your text to their interests through shared experiences and attention devices. So that's what Jim Cook's doing here in the first sentence of Body Heal Thyself, when he says, ever since the Savannah dweller first found the humans and royal flags and infection on Peru, human bodies have relied on the creative interventions of survive. I'm sure everyone's had someone come in with a rub some dirt on it or something, and they get a scratch or something like that. So that's kind of what Cook's doing here. He's enticing the reader by connecting to their personal experiences so that they read more because they connect to it. So as a writer, I will improve my intros by connecting to the reader's personal experiences more, because I know that made me want to read his text more because I connected to it.
So in chapter 33, in beginning and ending on pages 339 and 340, I thought that the paragraphs, restate your main point, discuss the implications of your argument, and refer to the beginning, were relevant to the article Body Heal Thyself by Daniel Ingber, just because in the conclusion he talked about the whole essay and kind of touched on all the points that summarized it really well. And then he discussed his implications by just once again touching on all the points and making it more understandable for everyone. And then he referred to the beginning, because in the beginning it talked about how scientists throughout history have been in labs trying to find cures and vaccines and such, and he suggests that it might not be there where they find it. It might be just within human bodies.
So for chapter 33, the beginnings offer background information that relates to what I was reading, why teens suffer anxiety. So the first sentence right off the bat, it says the disintegration of Jake's life took him by surprise. That sentence kind of gives us an idea of who Jake is as a student and as a person. He obviously was a person who could handle stress very well, who could handle all of the stuff that he has going on in his life. So I also did the conclusion to the teenage anxiety article. In the ending that refers best to the conclusion here is referring back to the beginning. In a sense, what they did here was the statement, the old Jake might have been first in line, but the new Jake, he hadn't bothered to show up. That kind of makes you think back to what you would have read in the beginning of his journey, and what they mentioned on how his anxiety and what he went through in his school year and all of that. It kind of shows the change Jake made personally, what he went through personally, and how that changed him as a person overall.